For those of you who don't know, it's throwback week here in the city of Philadelphia. The Phillies are making their first postseason since 2011. The Eagles are 4-0 for the first time since 2004. The Sixers have their best chance of making the finals since 2001. And here on set, we're partying like it's 1999. You're watching Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. I'm your host, as always, Aiden Kaczynski, and I'm joined by a slightly new panel today. We've got Mike, who's been on pretty much every week. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm good. Red October?
Oh, yeah. 100% for sure. And then for the first time this season, we've got my co-producer Shane with us to talk some Phillies. How are you doing, Shane?
I'm doing good. Can't wait for Friday.
Yeah, a lot of the city can't wait for Friday. And, of course, Friday will be the Phillies' first postseason game since 2011. And the way they got there was absolutely amazing. They beat the Houston Astros Monday night 3-0 to clinch their first playoff spot. As we said, for the first time since 2011, it has been 11 very, very long years. A lot of last place finishes for a good 5 years since then. A good amount of years where they were so close yet so far, and they finally made it. How are we feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I mean, it's been a long 11 years. I mean, I can't believe, the last time I was 11, I mean, it's hard to believe that it's been that long. It's also funny, last time they clinched against the Astros in the playoffs to get to the playoffs in 2011. So I'm feeling good, and I'm confident for the series this weekend.
Yeah, I'm confident for the series this weekend, too. I think that our pitching lines up I think it's better than who they're throwing out there, and Jose Quintana and Miles Michaelis. And just like Mike said, the funny thing is that it's October 7th, and in 2011, on the same day, that's when they got eliminated by the Cardinals. So hopefully we can get revenge on them.
Yeah, hopefully. There's some pretty crazy stats when it comes to the Phillies' playoff drought and just their playoff history. I mean, they've only made it 15 times in 118 years of postseason baseball. So this is a franchise that you really just have to be grateful every time they make the playoffs. We're not like the Yankees, who you expect to make the playoffs every year and have 27 World Series compared to our 15 playoffs appearances. We're not like the Dodgers, who've made it 10 straight years. Just for the fan base, how do you think you can just root? First of all, talk about rooting for this team, because you know that they don't make it that often. And there's talk about that excitement when you finally make it to the postseason.
Yeah, I think back from 2007 to 2011, we kind of took for granted how good and how special those teams were. And, 11 years gone, and now, I think everybody should be grateful that we can see playoff baseball again. So, we'll see what happens, but, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think you just feel for these players because you have JT Realmuto and Gene Segura, Gene Segura has been in the league since 2005 or something like that.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. And he has never made the playoffs before. And just seeing how happy they were just to clinch. And then Rhys Hoskins, been with this organization since 2017. And the interview, he was almost in tears. So it's just good to see for the players, but also just for the city and the fans waiting this long.
Yeah, and one of the guys that they brought in to help get here, they brought in two major pieces. First one was Bryce Harper, obviously. But they also brought in Kyle Schwarber, who had playoff experience with the Cubs, won the World Series for them to break their 108-year streak. How important do you think it is for these guys, too, who they were expected to win, they finally got here, and they're finally winning?
Yeah, Kyle Schwarber, he's got the most playoff experience on this team, and I think he'll be a big part of how far this team can go. And you saw it in that must-win game on Monday for the clincher, setting that tone with that leadoff home run on the first pitch. That is what you want from him. He's the power hitter. I still don't really agree with leading off with him, but, it's working. He's got 46 home runs, NL home run king, first Philly to do that since Ryan Howard. So, he's been their best pickup and probably the best pickup in a while for the Phillies.
Yeah, I agree with that. He hit 2 home runs during that game, and then I think it was Sunday night or Saturday night in the doubleheader against Washington. He also hit 2 home runs. Once again, another leadoff home run there, and then the leadoff home run during the Astros game. And also, just to your point, in Bryce Harper, we signed him specifically for him to help us get to the playoffs, and finally, they're getting there.
Yes, we talk about 2011 a lot. That rotation was amazing. You got Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, Cole Hamels, your top 3. Roy Oswalt completed your core 4. We've got a great pitching staff this year, and the ace of this team is Aaron Nola, clinched his playoff spot in ridiculous fashion, almost pitched a perfect game on Monday night. 6 2/3 perfect. When you look at his season stats, 11-13, 3.25 ERA. ERA's relatively good. The actual wins-losses not great, but he also struggled with Cole Hamels syndrome of not getting enough offense. What do you think it's like, first of all, Aaron Nola clinching the playoff spot after a lot of failed Septembers, first October start? What's this got to feel like for him to get through his first October start in that type of fashion leading up to the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, he's been through it all. He's been here, through the thick and thin. And I think it was just poetic that he got the chance to pitch in the clinching game to get to the playoffs for the first time in 11 years. I think that was perfect. And also I think Eflin closing out also, because these two guys have kind of been here and been through it all. And they've seen the good and the bad, even though it's been mostly bad. But, we know what Nola is, and we're happy that we can, we're seeing some success late in the season. And, Saturday will be a big test if, he is really up for the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought he was going to get a perfect game, just the way he was pitching, and just the way, like you mentioned, September's past, like, it just hasn't been good for him. I mean, it hasn't been good for the whole team, but it just seems so perfect for him to have gone 6 2/3, almost perfect, and just to be able to be the one to help them clinch on Monday.
Yeah, so obviously you got Wheeler and Nola at your top two. You feel very confident with them. How do you guys feel about the rest of the rotation? Ranger Suarez has struggled out. Bailey Falter is still relatively young to be pitching in a stage like this. Kyle Gibson's just completely hasn't looked like the guy that we traded for last year. How are you guys feeling about this rotation going into the postseason?
Yeah, I don't want to see Kyle Gibson really pitch at all. But I think for the third game, I think if you you start Suarez, then you can have Falter come in, kind of piggybacking that. I think that's your good 3-4. I think those are the clear guys. I mean, you obviously got Syndergaard and Gibson, but how much can you trust them? I think Falter and Suarez, you can trust them. I mean, Falter has been great. I know Suarez had a bad game on Monday, but or Tuesday. But I think it's probably Suarez and then maybe Falter at the end there.
Yeah, I mean, just to your point with Kyle Gibson, he has just been horrible this year for the Phillies, and I mean, I can't wait till they get rid of him. But yeah, I don't trust him at all in a playoff series. I mean, they did say they were moving Bailey Falter to the bullpen for the wild card series, but I do think having Ranger Suarez go for that third game if necessary, I think that's the way to go, even though when he pitched Saturday night, I mean, wasn't good, but he could have been hungover from the celebration. So.
There's definitely a lot of guys that look like they partied a little bit too much Monday. Mm-hmm. But when you now go into the postseason, you're playing the Cardinals, the team that eliminated you in 2011, the last time you made it. So you want a little bit of revenge there for sure. They have a 4-3 record against the Cardinals this season. They've stacked up pretty well against them. The other thing that hasn't really been mentioned a lot is the Phillies this will be their 4th road series. That's got to be pretty exhausting now going to the postseason and be on the road that much. How do you think the team's going to deal with that fatigue?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely – you're getting to this part of the season, and this is the first time a lot of these guys have already experienced postseason baseball. So there's going to be fatigue, but I know I've seen Thompson say you just have to push through it. You just got to – this is the playoffs. This is, you got to take this – you can't take this for granted. I mean, we saw how long it was till we got to the playoffs, how long it took us to get here. So you just got to push through it, and they might be tired, but, you just got to push through it.
Yeah, I mean, even these past 2 games, like, you were able to rest some of the players, but also get them into the games just to, keep them warmed up and everything for the wild card because of the long, road trip. And I think they'll be able to get through it. I mean, you've seen how happy they were when they clinched, and I just think they're going to take that momentum and just be able to conquer it.
So quickly before you wrap up, how are you guys feeling about this series? Did the Phillies win their first playoff series since 2010?
I think they do, just because I think, the Cardinals offense has struggled a little bit, and I think we do have the advantage. I think Wheeler and Nola, I think that will definitely serve us well, and hopefully Nola is what we saw on Monday. Yeah,
with Zach Wheeler, I mean, he faced 2-0 against them, no runs allowed, so.
Yeah, hopefully they do. We're now going to transition to another team that is doing very, very well this season, the Philadelphia Eagles. 4-0 after the win against the Jacksonville Jaguars in very sloppy conditions. Jalen Hurts did not look like him regular self. 16 of 25, 204 yards. Just really struggled. 1 rushing touchdown, but also a pick six that could have been costly had they not come back. Miles Sanders had a great game, 27 carries for 134 yards and touchdown. And A.J. Brown, 5 receptions for 95 yards. How did you guys think about this game, especially considering the conditions? They secured the ball, didn't have any turnovers, but the offense still didn't look great.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was Hurts' worst game this year, but at the same time, you got to take in consideration like the conditions, and they were down 14-0 early, and they didn't waver. They stuck in there. Sanders, like you said, was phenomenal, probably his best game as an Eagle. But yeah, with Hurts, with the rain, was it great? No, but they got the job done. The Jaguars they're a decent team. I think they're a little better than people were saying this week, but I think they played well. They got down, and they showed good teams come back from adversity, and that's what they did on Sunday when they were down 14-0.
Yeah, I mean, I think the weather definitely played a part in the way they played. I mean, this is his first bad game this season for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, and I mean, just the way he improved from last season. Like, I mean, one of his biggest critiques was that he wasn't able to throw the ball downfield, and I think he's improved on that this year.
He definitely has. The biggest reason why they won, definitely though, was Miles Sanders. 27 carries, like I said, 130 yards, the 2 touchdowns. But even with the touchdowns, I mean, he just looked great securing the ball and was a big reason why the offense was able to do what it did.
Yeah, he just kind of looks like a different. I mean, he's been good since we drafted him, but this year he just looks like a different running back. He's just more physical. The yards after contact, he's just so much better than he was last year. He kind of hasn't been really a physical running back in his career, but this year he's definitely breaking tackles and just getting in the end zone, which he didn't do last year. So I think that's just a big part, his physicality. And I always yell at him when he's going sideways. He's more, he's going more vertical now. He's, cutting the, going sideways and just going vertical. So I think he continues to do that, and he continues this season. I think we're talking a Pro Bowl season for him.
And when you look at Miles Sanders, you also have to deal with Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott as your 3 running backs. Sanders really just doesn't get that many red zone carries because of the fact you have Hurts and there's 2 other running backs like I just mentioned. Do you see him getting more red zone carries as the season progresses, or see more of that 3 down back until you get to the red zone?
I think through the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks, he's shown that you can trust him in the red zone. And I think, I like Gainwell. I'm not sure about. I do like Scott in the red zone too, but I think Trey Sermon, we got to start as the season goes on, keep using him more because he's that kind of the bigger body that we could use. And I think he only had 1 run, but I think it was like 15 yards.
A couple.
Yeah. So I think you utilize him more, but I think you have depth. So I think if they just utilize that, but I think Sanders is still your, you just trust him no matter what. With the game's on the line in the red zone, but I still think you trust Sanders down there.
The other reason that the Eagles won was because of their much improved defense from last year to this year. 4 first fumbles against the Jaguars today. 2 of them were more Trevor Lawrence losing grip of the ball, but they still were able to force turnovers on that. 1 interception by James Bradbury, who's just having a terrific season with the Eagles. Mike, how do you think that this defense is going to keep doing based off of what you saw this week and the 2 weeks prior?
Yeah, I mean, based off last week and just besides the Lions game, I mean, the sky's the limit for them. I mean, we saw the guys they bring in. You bring in Hassan Reddick, who's just definitely had his best game as an Eagle. I mean, he kind of struggled a little bit, but last game, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumbles recovered. That's why we signed him. And I hope we see that more. But guys like James Bradbury also just phenomenal, and Darius Slay again's been playing great. Hopefully he's healthy for next week. But yeah, I mean the defense just has been so good, and kind of the guys like Cox and Graham are kind of starting to find their footing again, which we didn't see last year. So I'm excited for this defense.
The other thing, too, when it comes to the Eagles, a big critique was Jonathan Gannon. The play calling was very conservative on defense, a lot of chunk yards. How do you think the defense looks? 'Cause to me, it looks like they're actually being a lot more aggressive. And do you think that's helping them win?
Yeah, I think he heard the noise a little bit, and I think that kind of got to him. And I think the players kind of agree with the fans a little bit and kind of voice their frustration too. And I think Gannon, he's definitely doing a great job of adjusting. I'm hoping that it stays like that. We don't see what we saw in week 1 and most of last year. But I'm liking the adjustment he's making, just being more aggressive, blitzing more. He's got to utilize the players you have. And, he didn't do that a lot of last year, but he's definitely shown a little bit of improvement through the last few weeks.
You mentioned Hassan Reddick. Awesome game, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. They brought him from Detroit to really help with that defensive line. How do you think it's helped not only the Eagles' defense, but also having Brandon Graham on the outside, now having someone that can actually help them? Because if we're going to be honest, Barnett was just not the type of outside rusher that you needed to pair with Graham.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just have one guy because then the defense just the offensive line would just focus, on one guy. I mean, we saw Cox getting double teamed for years. You need multiple guys who can get to the quarterback, and adding Hassan Reddick, especially with, we know what Graham and Cox are. They're older, and we're not expecting all-pro seasons from them. So getting that help is huge, and Hassan Reddick, I think, will just continue to provide that spark, and hopefully guys like Jordan Davis, young guys, will start getting more playing time and help this defense even more.
Yeah, so the Eagles have improved to 4-0. Like we said, they're still have sole possession of first place, but is a lot closer than people thought the NFC East race would be. Cowboys and Giants are right behind, both tied 3-1. Cowboys have the tiebreaker over the Giants for right now, but that could change, obviously, still pretty early in the season. And the Commanders are in dead last with a 1-3 record. Carson Wentz has very much struggled this season, to the delight of some Eagles fans. But when you look at the standings, Mike, this is a lot closer than people thought it was going to be. How do you think the Eagles are feeling about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Eagles, I think a lot of people at the beginning of the season didn't really have the Eagles here at this point anyway. So, but I do think you got the Cowboys at 3-1. I think they're the team probably to worry about. The Giants are a little surprising. I think Barkley's finally he's staying healthy, and I think that will definitely make them a little bit of a threat, but I think it's still the Cowboys, and we don't know with Dak coming back, but I still think the Eagles are a much better team at this point, but we'll see how that plays out with Dak and Cooper Rush and what they do there.
So now when you also look at the standings, like you said, the Cowboys definitely, it feels like, are the team to beat right now, but the Giants' defense is also really good. Do you think if there's a defensive matchup, the Eagles should still be favored? Because, like I said, the Giants' defense is much more improved, same as the Eagles' defense is.
Yeah, I still think the Eagles have the edge in that. But yeah, you're right. The Giants' defense has been pretty good, and but at the same time, the Giants, their offense is still their offense, and their line's not great. And Daniel Jones, is Daniel Jones. He's an average quarterback, but nothing special. So I think, their defense is good, but at the same time, their offense. But Barkley has stayed healthy, so that could be a wild card factor for them for sure.
For sure. Now when you see the Eagles are trying to go to 5-0, they're playing the Cardinals this weekend in Arizona, 4:25 start. The Cardinals have really struggled a lot. They're 2-2 right now. This is the Eagles' best chance to go 5-0 in a very, very long time. Do you think that they will be able to do it?
I hope so. I mean, they have not won a game in Arizona. I think I looked since 2001. I think they lost their last 6 games in Arizona. Yeah. So that is not a great stat. But at the same time, the Cardinals have not looked good. They don't have DeAndre Hopkins. They lost Christian Kirk. And they don't have Rondell Moore. And their offense Kyler Murray just has not looked, ever since that whole thing with his contract, and this year he has not looked great. And I think, losing DeAndre Hopkins for a little bit of that is part of that. But I'm not too worried. Just looking at how they played this season and how they played the end of last season, because they started undefeated, I'm pretty sure, last year, then just tailed off. So it doesn't look like they've bounced back since then. But I'm confident. I think the only thing they have is having the home field advantage.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you there. We're now going to go to the Sixers, who just started their preseason, not regular season quite yet, but there's still some notable things that happen in these games. First of all, they blew out their first game, beating the Nets 127-108, and they also beat the Cavaliers last night in a much closer game, 113-112. Some notable stuff that Montrezl Harrell averaged 11.5 points per game, 4 rebounds. That was a late signing for them, someone that really helped a lot. Their bench players looked really good. Korkmaz and Isaiah Joe both are scoring a decent amount of points per game. How do you think the bench is really playing through these first 2 games so far?
Yeah, I like it, especially with Harrell. I know I talked a little bit last week about that physicality that he and Tucker brings. Tucker kind of worried me a little bit in the preseason, but we know what he brings. We know he's not going to score. He just brings that physicality, the rebounds, the corner threes. And Harrell does the same thing. He doesn't shoot, but I think he's a perfect backup for Embiid. He's physical, he's a rebounder, he's a bruiser. So I think he's perfect, and I do like what I'm seeing. And Tyrese Maxey has been just great, and I think we're in for a special season with him. I think could be his first All-Star appearance this year.
Yeah, so the other 2 guys you mentioned before we go too much into Maxey, Embiid and Harden both didn't look great in their first preseason game. They didn't play in the first game, played in the second. Obviously, they should still be very, very good. They just need to shake off some rust. What are you expecting their relationship to be now that they've played a half season together?
Just seeing on social media and just seeing how they interact. It seems like they have a good relationship, and it seems like Harden, I'm not going to say just from one game and one crossover last night that he's back to his form, but he looks in shape, and he looks much better than he did last year. I know it's preseason, but I think, him and Embiid, that's so important that they're just on the same page, and I think just what I've seen, I mean, it's not that much. What we saw last year was only half a season, but I think it still might take a little bit getting used to. But I think as the season goes along, you'll see them get more comfortable with each other.
Yeah, so the one guy that we definitely want to focus on, Tyrese Maxey, has been having an awesome preseason after a great regular season. Last year, 20 points, 1 rebound, 3 assists versus the Nets, 21 points, another rebound, 2 assists versus the Cavs. He is just an awesome spark plug, energy guy for the Sixers. What do you expect his role to be this year?
I think he's going to be. I mean, you still have Harden and Embiid, so and Harris, so he still might take a step back a little bit. But I think just you have to trust him and let him, just because you have Harden, just because you have Embiid, Maxey's a special player, and you just have to let him do his thing. And if that means not letting Harden touch the ball as much, I mean, you got to just let Tyrese play. And he's in for a special season that we've seen these first 2 games and what we saw last year and then the year before that a little bit in the playoffs. So I'm excited for him.
Yeah, my one criticism of Maxey is that he definitely plays very fast. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like the Sixers haven't made him a point guard, because he just is too fast of a guy to slow down. Do you expect that to change too much, or do you expect the Sixers maybe to put him at the 1 in certain situations?
Yeah, I think it just depends on how the game's going and how, like you said, he is fast. I mean, that's a great thing for point guards, but it could be a bad thing too. But I think we got to remember, he's only 21 years old, and I think he's got a lot of room to grow, but I think we have to be careful not putting too much on our shoulders, but at the same time, the expectations are lifted a little bit for him. But I'm expecting growth, and I'm expecting him just to put it all together.
Yeah, no,
piece by
definitely.
piece.
Yeah, he was not a guy that the Sixers, when they drafted him late in the first round, to be this type of player, but he's really stepped up. He's got the whole city behind him, it feels like. So we're expecting big things from not only him, but also the Sixers. We're now going to go into Fast 5. We're going to go with our favorite segment, Talking Baseball with Mike.
Yep. So obviously the playoffs start this weekend, but the bigger story kind of this week was Aaron Judge hitting his 62nd home run, breaking the AL home run record. Roger Maris was 61. And, I think we just have to, appreciate what he's done. I mean, a lot of talk with, if he's really the home run king, with the, steroid users with Bonds and McGuire. But I think we just have to sit back and just, we witness history, and that's what we saw with what he's done in the past. With this year has just been awesome, and I think as a baseball fan, just between him and Pujols and what they've done, and just the home run chases, I think it's been fun, and it's made baseball fun to watch this year, and it's definitely something baseball has needed for the sport.
Yeah, definitely. And now that you have someone like Aaron Judge to break a record like that, it's definitely very cool. And like you said, very important for baseball, who's had image problems in the recent past. I'm also going to go to you. Most surprising team after week 4 now for football?
Yeah, I think surprising in not a good way. I think the Broncos have been definitely the most surprising, disappointing team. A lot of talk on social media, Geno Smith's having a better season than Russell Wilson, which he is. But I doubt that's going to continue. But they have not looked good really at all. Their offense just has been horrible. Their defense has been good, but just Russell Wilson just does not look that good down there. And their coach, Hackett, just from that first game, kind of had a bad sense with him. But we'll see what happens with them. But they're definitely my surprising, disappointing team so far.
Yeah, the one team that surprised me in a good way is the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
Geno Smith has come in as a starter after being a backup for a very long time in his career, really stepped up. They're 2-2. I think that this is a team that could sneak in the playoffs, especially with the West being as weak as it is. Now we're going to go back to Mike for NBA MVP predictions.
All right, so I'm going to go with Joel Embiid is finally going to break through this year. After 2 past seasons falling behind Nikola Jokic for MVP, I think he will break through this year. Just the big thing, it's just he's got to play the games and he's got to be available. But I think, the game last night, he still looks like the Embiid. And I'm excited. I hope this is the year that he can break through. And obviously Nikola has beaten him out the past couple years. But I think this could be the year that he really, breaks through the MVP race.
Yeah, anyone that's watched this show for the past couple of years know that we've been very much pushing for Embiid to get an MVP. Hopefully it finally happens this year, but I guess we'll see. We're now going to go to Shane with some MLB wildcard predictions.
Yeah, so one of the games that stand out to me is the New York Mets versus San Diego Padres. I think that the San Diego Padres can slip by the Mets in this series because, one, the New York Mets are not throwing out Jacob deGrom for Game 1. They are going with Max Scherzer, but he has been struggling as of late. And also, Juan Soto has a .303 batting average, 71 hits, 16 home runs, 42 RBIs, and 40 runs scored in 68 games against the Mets. And he likes to hit at Citi Field as well. So.
Yes, that's definitely one to look out for. Also, when you go to the AL, some pretty crazy games. When you look at the Mariners and Blue Jays as well, do you have any predictions on that? Mariners obviously making first postseason as well in 20 years. So
Yeah, so I think the Blue Jays are going to get through that because they're playing in Toronto, and I mean that crowd gets loud over there. And also with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. having a great year, and also I can't remember his name. Forget his name. The shortstop. Bichette, yeah.
Yeah, no, when you look at the Blue Jays, their offense just stacks up so well against them. Mariners are kind of a surprise team. They had like 90 wins last year, so they were right on the edge. Now that they opened up the wild card, they were able to sneak in. Final one. Guardians are playing the Rays. Rays obviously made it to the World Series in 2020. Any way that they are able to get past the Guardians for this one?
I don't think so. I mean, the Guardians lineup is secretly a scary lineup for them. Jose Ramirez has a 280 batting average. He hit 29 home runs and has 126 RBIs this season. And then the rookie Steven Kwan, 298 batting average, 6 home runs, and 52 RBIs. And once again, Cleveland is playing at home, so I think they have the advantage there.
Thank you so much, Shane. We're now going to go one last thing for Fast Five. There's a couple really cool games coming out of the Palestra. Obviously, that is the basketball arena on UPenn's campus, also known as the Cathedral of College Basketball. On November 30th, there is a doubleheader between the City Five. LaSalle's going to be taking on Temple, and after that, St. Joe's will be playing UPenn. A really cool thing that's also happening is January 3rd or 15th. The Landmark Conference, which is a Division III conference, will be having quadruple header. It is the first time that this conference has ever played in the Palestra. Some local teams are Susquehanna, University of Scranton, Elizabeth College. So it's a very cool opportunity for these D3 athletes who have worked very hard to get where they're at to now be able to play at a big-time arena. That wraps up the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on our social medias on Twitter and Instagram at SportsTalk LTV. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll hope that you tune in for the next show.